How are you guys? Welcome back to Wargaming China. And today I was going to do a breakdown of Japanese armoured formations in the Pacific with obviously the emphasis on China. But when I got all my books out and started to read into it, and the books that I looked at and have in my library, Rotman, the authors of Rotman, Takizawa, Zaloga, Ness, Forty, Doherty and McCormack, with the latest, the most contemporary book being the Cormac book, which was published recently. So what I decided to do was just look at all the contradictions from the books I read, and then I watched a few videos, the Chieftain and military history visualized and a few more. And I realized that the subject is not as unique as I want it to be. And you know me, I don't like to do videos other people have done or videos I think other people would do a better job of, because I am not an expert on the production techniques of Japanese armor. I'm not an expert on the communications and command and control system of the Japanese army. Yeah, I have books on it, but I'll be quoting those books. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this video into how to field your Japanese tanks on the Wargames table, which is a much better and easier subject to tackle than going into the formations and tactical doctrine of Japanese armor. Now, I'm going to say this straight off the bat. Japan never formalized the organizations. They never formalized their organization of their armored units until 1942. And even when they did that, when they entered the field, the commanders would usually package them off as infantry support. So if, say, we look at these tanks here, they are this would represent a tank platoon of the 7th Tank Regiment of the 2nd Japanese Armoured Division on Luzon in 1944. Now, you can probably see a difference in the paint colours, because I only recently painted these and I didn't quite get the green right, but I was never happy with that green, and I'm more happier with this green. This is the thing when you paint things years apart, you forget the colours you used. But anyway, so this is a platoon. Now, the important thing to remember about fielding your Japanese armour on the wargaming table is communication. Now, in a platoon of Japanese armour, only the platoon commander has a radio. And that's very important. So only the platoon commander has radios, company commanders and the regimental commanders have radios in their vehicles. The rest are using flags, follow my leader, or a good briefing before. Now, if we say that that if you're playing 28mm and you're playing at a platoon level, a platoon of tanks would be the maximum you should be fielding. Even then, if I was fielding a platoon, I might just field one tank. If I was playing a company level, I for sure would have a platoon of Japanese armoured support. If I was playing at the regimental level, still perhaps a company. But then again, as I play rapid fire, I'm just going to show you now what a company of the 7th Tank Regiment looked like, okay? So it consists of 10 Type 97s and 3 Type 95s. So we'll put them on the table. So 2 platoons. Now I'm putting Shinoda Chihas on the table now because they were part of the 7th Armoured Regiment. And then the company commander's tank. So what do we have there? We have 3, 6, 9, 10 Chihas and 3 Hargos. Some sources suggest that you put another Hargo with the RHQ, but that's probably later. I have fielded tanks recently in the Zhuzhou campaign, and the last game I fielded a regiment. And how I field a regiment of Japanese armour for rapid fire is as follows. Now, getting back to the radios in the Japanese tanks. Now, apparently, in the 1930s, Japanese radio sets and record players were quite a big export to the West, and were found in many homes throughout the world, in America and Europe. And we might think from this that Japan had quite capable radio communications industry. But in fact, because, especially for tanks, before say 1941, Japan didn't actually build a lot. So to ask these companies to build radios in batches of a few hundred was very expensive for these companies. There was no money in it for them. So a lot of communications equipment was actually bespoke, made in small workshops by individuals. And I don't want to kid around here. I'm quoting from McCormack because he's the only one that's ever gone into the radio technology of the Japanese army in quite detail. I've never seen such detail discussed before, and I want to share it with you. So, at the beginning of the war, at the beginning of 1941, when America enters the war, Japanese tanks, Japanese radios are proficient and capable, but they are not as of good quality component-wise or assembly-wise as what European or American counterparts are. Now, this changes by 1942 with the injection of a lot of money and a lot of orders. And suddenly we see the Japanese radio equipment being produced at a far greater level, a little higher level of production, but also we see an improvement in quality. Now, by that I mean the casing and the mountings for all the components are absolutely first class and capable of taking the punishments of campaigning, of warfare. However, this step up of production has led to two things. Firstly, when the Japanese are producing radio equipment, the cases are very well made, but the machines themselves are very hard to open up and to get to the parts. If we looked at an American radio or a German radio, there's 6 panels to make the box. Each panel is you can unscrew each panel to get to the component you need to get to. Whereas with the Japanese radio, there's only one panel that comes off. So therefore you have to be stripping the whole radio out to get to the part that you want to get to for maintenance. Now that is a layman's approach, okay? That's just basically for layman. So for maintenance and fixing and repairs, Japanese radios were not as user-friendly as what the West or Germany was producing. The Russians were just copying the Germans by this time. They were just producing German radio equipment, as far as I know. Now, there's also one more thing that McCormack revealed to me, and this is vital for communications with tanks. McCormack uses an Allied report, and the Allies were astonished that Japanese radios were not weatherproofed. They weren't. Each panel was not sealed with a rubber gasket or flange, or just screwed straight in. Also, Japanese radio equipment was not treated with chemicals that hinder mold and mildew. Americans, British, the Allies had accepted the consequences that you would have to deal with condensation and fog inside radio sets as far as the First World War. But the Japanese never ever addressed this issue. Now, you must know, and I know, that one of the most important things of warfare is communication. Now, these radios. Now I'm going to stop now. I might start waffling here, and I might ramble on for a while. So if you're not interested, piss off. All right, or go get yourself a drink. So if we looked at the Battle of Wanjialing, all of the sources I read always state the Japanese were having hellacious problems with their radios. And when I'd first read about this, before I read McCormack's book, I thought, well, I can understand that. You know, the hills are very magnets in a very highly magnetic field when you enter the Wanjialing range, and it's heavily rain and fog. And this is why the Japanese army, I can't remember his name. I did a scenario, I'd have to look it up. But I think it's the 106th Division enters Wanjialing, and immediately all of its radios are suffering. So we cannot underestimate how important weatherproofing and mold and fungus proofing radios was and is, and we cannot overestimate the fact that the Japanese did not compensate for this. Their radios couldn't handle it. They just couldn't handle the heat, the moisture and fog and mildew, and because of maintenance being so hard on them, it really did affect the Japanese a lot. Now then, so if I was to field a rapid fire Japanese tank regiment, the 7th Tank Regiment for rapid fire, say. It would consist of, for rapid fire war game rules, you know. So 2 tanks in the HQ. Oh, sorry, I was doing a company, sorry. I get, you know, I do this on the fly. So that would be a company of tanks. And as I said, the platoon leaders have radios, and so does the company commander. But the rest of the tanks is full on a leader. So if we wanted to transfer a regiment for rapid fire, want to play a regiment, what we'd do is we'd have a HQ, light tank company, and then 3 tank companies. 1, 2, 3 tank companies, 3. And the final, the 4th company, or the 5th company, is the gun company. So that was how Japan had formalized. That's to represent how you would field a Japanese armoured regiment on the rapid fire table. Now I know there's going to be those of you who said, well, Adam, if there are 3 Hargos to every platoon, and 9 Hargos per company and so on, then aren't my maths wrong? I mean, I'm not going to break it down. Let me just, you know what I'm like, I'm not the best communicator, but I did have something written down here. So if we looked at the 4th Tank Regiment for 1939, we would see a HQ of 2 Type 95 light tanks and 2 Type 94 tankettes. Now this is for 1939. As I said, they didn't formalise their organisations until 1942. So then we'd have the 1st Light Company, which would be 9 Type 95s. The 2nd Company was also another 9 Type 95 light tanks, Hargos. The 3rd Company is another 9 Type 95 tanks. And then you have the 4th Company, which is a medium company. And that's 9 Type 89s and 2 Type 94 tankettes. So you see there's a huge difference between that and later formations. And this is why when I read all the things, I decided that the formations were not something I wanted to get into for this video. We're just going to talk about the capabilities and how they're used and how to field them on the Wargames table. Because that'll keep it simple for me and you, and I won't get things wrong. And I want to emphasize here that if you want to do the Malayan campaign, or you want to do the tanks on Guadalcanal, or you want to do the 7th Tank Regiment for Luzon, each formation is different. Because they're on different timelines, occur at different dates, and the tanks are drawn from different areas. And as I said, and I will keep saying, I didn't formalise that a tanks on a tank division or what a tank regiment was going to be until 1942. Now, if we looked at the biggest formations that the Japanese would field for armour, which would be a division, and we'll look at the 2nd Armoured Division, which fought in the Philippines, we will see that it originally had 4 tank battalions, but one was stripped off and sent to, I think it's Saipan. So that left it with 3 tank regiments. Now these tank regiments were formed as 2 tank regiments formed a brigade. Now if you want to have a brigade of armour, of Japanese armour for rapid fire, for the Philippines campaign, I'll show you what it looks like. So, it's going to take me a while, I've got to get all my tanks out, and then we're going to see some new stuff. So getting back to the radio, I was quite shocked that the Japanese could match the quality of communications when it came to like range and clear signalling, but couldn't match the and could match the quality of components, but they just couldn't match the quality of the conception of having maintenance to it. And when it comes to maintenance, not only in radios, but in every part of the armoured doctrine, Japan is woefully, radically under-equipped as far as maintenance goes. Very, very, very. I mean, if we looked at some books, they'd tell you, oh yeah, the Tank Brigade, I had a maintenance company of 210 trucks and 12 armoured vehicles and 286 men, you know. But that was what they wanted to achieve. But as I said, what was achieved in the field and what was written down, 2 different things. The average Japanese armoured regiment was only being supported by a small maintenance company of a dozen trucks, and maybe a truck towing vehicle. And so we'll show you what it is. Now, bit of an anomaly here. I'm going to slip it in an anomaly just to make it more confusing, because it should be if it's about Japanese or Indian Japanese. God damn. Oh no. Dropped a vehicle. No breakages. Sorry, you're going to have to bear with me. I wasn't actually supposed to do a video today, but things came up. Now, by 1944, obviously, the Japanese had started to reduce SPs into their armoured formations, SP-75 Honeys. Now, the Honeys were not part of the gun company. They were only attached to one regiment, and they were part of the HQ. So if we looked at this, HQ, first company, second company, third company, fourth company, gun company, and then we'd go like this. HQ, first company, second company, third company, fourth company, gun company. It goes over. Well, I can't actually move those over because now I want to reduce the HQ. So that's a brigade. So far we're building a brigade. Okay, so let's have the HQ, the brigade. Now I'm not even going to mention the name of the SPs because they didn't serve in China. Right? You know, I haven't ever found it. And as I said, I wanted to keep this simple, and I don't want to tread on anybody's toes. So we go in there. Then added to the regiment, the brigade, was a machine cannon, SP machine cannon company of 12 SP 20mm. And for rapid fire to all of that, we want to add one recovery repair truck. So I know that it's, there you go, you can see it all there. So there we go, that would be a Japanese armoured brigade of the 2nd Armoured Division for the Philippines in 1944. Now unfortunately, the 2nd Armoured Division, they were only given one chance to attack as a whole formation, which was around the town of San Jose, and because they failed to stop or break the Americans, advance, the Japanese commander Yamashita decided that they would be drawn back and sent to support infantry or as fixed defences. So he broke up the entire division. So really, you never need to have a Japanese armoured division because it never fought as one. If you know what I mean. Very briefly. I mean, even before it got to San Jose, bits had been chiselled off. But there you go. That's an armor brigade for Japan. Now, as we see with the Type 94s, we don't see these later war. We might see some Type 97s, but again, that depends on the formation. I'll give you an example of that. So 1941 Tank Regiment would be, the HQ would be 2 Type 95s and 1 Type 97. Then they would have the first company, the light tank company of 13 Type 95 light tanks, Hargos, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 medium companies. So they didn't have the gun company in 1941. They just had 4 companies, each of 10 Type 97s, Chihas, and 2 Type 95s. And then a maintenance company. And according to your sources, the maintenance company might be large. But look, I like to look, for me, if you're doing anything, and remember, I don't do this for money, this is a free channel, but if you're doing something for money and you want to make money off what comes out of your mouth, you should be using the best sources that you can get and the most contemporary, the most recent sources you can get. And I'll never stop emphasizing that. So, and I'll be honest, I do love many of the author's works that I've written about, that I've just named, but some of them, I'll be honest with you, some of them are such good names and have written on such a broad subject. I'm going to quote what my granddad said. If you're an expert on one thing, you can pretty much know fuck all about anything else. If you know everything, if you know a lot about everything, it means you know fuck all about one thing in particular. So, I've got a great respect for people who write books, but I think sometimes people should stay in their lanes, and I appreciate that some of the books we read, the authors don't have a passion for the subject as they do for others. So, you know, they wouldn't break their balls as much or go into it as much because they wouldn't enjoy it as much. And passion is what brings you good research. Now then, so there we go. That's a Tank Brigade for the Philippines, 1944. Now, when we look at Japanese camouflage systems, especially for your armor. Now, the most popular one, and it's the hardest to paint. I mean, I think I've only ever seen Robert Brown when he painted the yellow banded Japanese camo system. That was the best I've ever seen it. But I mean, you know, you go to museums, everything, and you know, they are quite capable of making mistakes. You look at you can look at colorized images, and that'd probably be the best way to go. I mean, not for the colors, but for how they are painted on the tank. So because I never actually felt that I could do a good job of the yellow banded camouflage system, I didn't use it. But I will show you what I did use, because you've all seen my other tank formation. So another good thing to remember about the Japanese army is they found out very early that petrol tanks are a bad idea. So all of their tanks were diesel. I mean, when they brought the Type 89 out, they did bring some out in diesel and some out in petrol. But the Type 89 was always a work in progress. If you ever see 10 of them, 3 of them have got different turrets. So the tanks I'm putting away now, they were mainly Fujimi, Airfix, and a company called Frontline, resin company. Great models at a great price. And these are from Simon's soldiers. I know Simon's a great bloke. So some of this, that's Simon's soldiers, and what I'm going to put on now, my Type 89s. Now, I'm a big believer that wherever you're from, you should try and buy local. So these, I went to my mate Simon just up the road and picked them up, made in Australia, and very nice they are too. So their front line, at the time I think they're made in Australia. Following ones are Simon's soldiers, also made in Australia. And then the final two are OS models, made by a lovely old gentleman in Tasmania. And I'll be honest with you, I really do love the OS models a lot. I just think that they're the best you can get. I'm not knocking Simon's soldiers ones. They're very good, very beautiful, and easier to get than the OS model ones. But even here you can see the different turrets in use. You can see the different types of turrets. And there was a lot of variation in Type 89 turrets, and it's a subject I'm not going to go into because somebody else will, and will do a far better job than I ever could. So for a tank regiment like that, 2 repair trucks, two supply trucks and a repair truck. There you go. There's a regiment, and I would use that regiment for China. The camouflage is for China. It's a version of camouflage. It's a camouflage system that was, as far as I know, only used in China. But I wanted to emphasize that the Japs would repaint their tanks for whenever they felt like it, and when it comes to painting your Japanese tanks, get the colours right and have fun. Don't kill yourselves, you know? Because even if your paint job's horrific, it won't affect the roll of dice on a Wargames table. Okay, so I've talked about the radios, I've talked about the formations, I've talked about how to get them on the Wargames table. Now listen, Japanese tank development, just a quick word on it. Japanese tank development was actually pretty advanced for its day. If we looked at the Type 94, no, Type 95, introduced in 1934. What was the rest of the world producing in 1934? They were, the Germany was making the Panzer I, machine gun armed, 2 skinny tracks, and mechanically unreliable. The British, they were making the Vickers. I think it was the Mark IV, which was again a machine gun armed tank. No problems with reliability with the Vickers though. What were the Russians doing? They were working on the T-26, but they hadn't put a 45mm gun on it yet. It was just 2 twin turrets with machine guns. And what were the Americans doing? They were working on the T-5 combat car, which was another twin turret with machine guns. So just in that description alone, we can see that in 1934, the Hargo was ahead of the game. It really was. So let's not compare the Hargo to the later war tanks or to the tanks of World War II. Let's just compare it to the tanks from 1934, and it does actually quite well for itself. Okay, that's it. Hope you like that. I hope you give me a like, and I'd love it if you you want to give me a few comments and point out a few things. I'd love to hear from you, because as I said, I had so many contradictions in my sources that I didn't. It was a subject that I thought, oh, let somebody else cover it. Let them. I mean, you got to admit, militarists to visualize did a brilliant job. All he did was point out what everybody had said, and I think that's the best way to platform anything. So there you go. I hope you like that. I hope you subscribe. I hope to see you next time. Bye.